Today we are talking about how to record pro vocals, and this video is very kindly sponsored by DistroKid, but more about them in just a second. I have had so many requests from you all to make a video about vocals, so that's what I'm going to do. But I'm not going to make one, I'm going to make a vocal series. All of these things I want to cover, and in this video I'm going to talk about the recording. Before I dive into the technical aspect, ultimately the goal of the entire process is to produce a sound that's enjoyable to listen to. I wonder why so many people ask for me to make a vocal video, considering that everything that I have learned from the internet. There's so much useful information out there already. There's often a sense of self-doubt and overwhelm with all the equipment, all the possibilities, or almost imposter syndrome when it comes to recording vocals, where you just think, yeah, well, I don't know what I'm doing. All you're doing is familiarizing yourself with what happens when you do one thing versus another. What if you're really close to the microphone versus much further away? And what if it's a condenser microphone or a dynamic microphone? If it's a male vocal, a female vocal, if you use a compressor before an EQ. But they're not tools to be overwhelmed by. They are just options that can push your vocal sound in a certain direction. And the more you familiarize yourself with what does what, the more you can aim at a certain style of vocal. That to me is the true test of a skillful vocal engineer or producer or singer. It's just somebody that knows how to get the sound that they're looking for. I say all the time at the end of my videos to believe in yourself and you will be unstoppable. And I know it's a bit cheesy, but it's true. If you believe that you can create the vocal sound that you're looking for, that you can become a high quality vocal performer or producer, then you will. Some of the coolest records and tracks were recorded in the strangest settings with the most bizarre microphone setups, and the vocalist was lying down or in a closet or who knows what. But ultimately, the North Star is just that we are trying to produce a sound that is emotionally enjoyable to listen to. I'm going to break this recording video into 3 parts. There's the physical setup, the digital setup, and the most important one, the performance. Let's dive into it. Hold on though, before we dive into it, I would like to mention our sponsor for this video, DistroKid. I have a new song coming out, it's called Drift, and I'm going to use it as an example throughout this vocal series because it has my vocal, but it also has a female vocalist, Jessica Johnson, on it. And I learned a lot about mixing, producing, recording my vocal versus her vocal, how to blend them all together. So it's a really great example. It's linked down below if you want to go and check it out. Not only are collaborations a great way to expand and explore your production technique, it's also a great way to grow your audience and your network. One of the top suggestions that I hear regularly from music marketers is the best way to get your music heard is to collaborate with other artists, and then it will be spread among the artist's audience. So it's all great, but then of course you've got to actually figure out how to separate the royalties. DistroKid is a distributor that allows you to release your music to any of the digital streaming platforms, and with their new feature Splits, which I think used to be called Teams, this tool makes it very simple to organize the collaboration splits. But there are some key features to this tool which make it really handy. You can add unlimited collaborators to any track, you can change the splits at any time. You can also add or remove collaborators at any time. You can go back in time and see what the previous splits were. Also, for privacy, it doesn't share with everyone what everyone's split and collaborations are. If your collaborators don't have a DistroKid account, they can create one for $10. It's very simple. And if during the process of releasing a track, the collaborator takes a while to sign up to DistroKid, the money that they would have made will just be held by DistroKid until they sign up, and then they will receive all of the money that they're due. This way, everyone that you work with is sure to get the split of the royalties that they deserve. And of course, you make 100% of the earnings, as DistroKid just takes one annual payment when you sign up to distribute through them, and they take 0% of the royalty earnings. Thanks again to DistroKid for sponsoring this video. It's really a pleasure to have them supporting, and thanks to you guys for checking them out. I have a link for DistroKid down below if you want to sign up and check it out. You'll get 7% off your first year, and it's one of the easiest ways to get everyone in the world to start listening to your music. The physical setup. This includes all of your equipment and the room that you're recording in. When it comes to spending money on equipment, there is definitely a bell curve. The more money that you spend, the higher quality your sound will get. But at a certain point, somewhere between the 1,000 to 10,000 range, your return on investment starts to diminish. I can't say a specific number where if you spend X amount of money, you will immediately have a pro quality sounding vocal, because there's so many factors that go into it. But certainly if you spend between £200 to £400 on a microphone, a few £100 on an interface, and get yourself some decent headphones and a good laptop, and then record in the right room, you are well on your way to having a pro quality vocal. You don't need a $5,000 microphone to create a high quality sound that could go on radio or be enjoyed at the top of the charts. My general philosophy when it comes to buying equipment is to get started wherever you can. If you're in that ballpark region, it's probably worth saving just a little bit more and buying once, rather than buying a really cheap piece of equipment and then a year later needing to buy another one. You end up spending more that way anyway. I've had this Rode NT2A microphone for years now, and it keeps performing, along with my audio interface and these headphones. But of course, you don't want to wait for years to buy the equipment, because it is a good idea to just get started, because you can learn a lot about the process even with the cheap microphone. So aim to buy the best that you can and to buy once. The physical setup starts with the room that you're in. Hello! Of course, this room is treated acoustically, and I have a video about that. You guys can go watch how I made the panels and how I tailored the room to try and get the best sound that I could. This can be done relatively inexpensively. If you're a bedroom producer, it might not be the most accessible thing to hang a bunch of panels from the wall. Of course, you're just trying to control the sound. Previously, I was working up in my bedroom and it didn't look as cool, but it still sounded good when I put duvets and pillows and just filled the room up with absorbing material. You obviously don't want to go completely overboard. There are these cool rooms around the world where they are the quietest rooms in the world. I think recording vocals in there would probably be a little bit underwhelming. There's something nice about some of the quality that comes in from the reverberations around the room, because there's a little bit of energy that comes into the vocal from recording like that. You don't want to treat the room so much that you kill the color in the vocal and you basically have this sort of numbed out dead sound. You also don't want it to be so reverby, as we producers like to say, because of course that's going to bleed into your signal. I've found that the most important areas to take care of is actually what's to the side and behind you. If you're using a microphone like I am, which is in a cardioid polar pattern, so it's recording predominantly from the front of the microphone, then that's where the most important reflections are going to be, as from behind you back into the microphone. A lot of people put the filter thing that goes on the back of the microphone here, and I'm sure those help to a degree, but I think that taking care of what's behind and around you is probably going to do most of the work if you can. That's where being in a closet or under a duvet is probably better than in a completely empty, reverby room. If you're struggling to treat your room that much, using a dynamic microphone rather than a condenser microphone can be very helpful. So the SM58 that I mentioned previously, this one actually sounds pretty good compared to a condenser microphone, this one, in a noisier room. When I was staying in the city and I didn't have any acoustic treatment whatsoever, this microphone performed way better than this one, because all it really picked up was my vocal right next to it, whereas this one picked up everything. You could hear lorries and cars driving past, but this one doesn't sound anywhere near as good as this one does in a nice quiet space. You just want to familiarize yourself with what environment am I going to be recording in, what voice am I going to be recording, and which microphones are going to give me the best result considering all of those things. You then have the microphone technique in itself. It helps to understand the emotion you want to put through in the song to determine how you should use the microphone. Billie Eilish has gone for an intimate sound, so it obviously makes sense to be right up close because that gives you that ASMR sound. Whereas if you want a bigger, brighter sound, you might want to be slightly further away, or you might even want to use a dynamic microphone and, like those rock stars out there, be pretty much eating the microphone and screaming into it. Generally, for the average pop vocal, I have found that using a condenser microphone and being this kind of distance away from it works well. Some really plosive sounds that have a lot of diction, whether there's like S's and P's and that kind of stuff. Obviously, I have a pop filter there. It's going to help a little bit, but sometimes it can help just to sing just a tiny bit off to the side so that if any air that's coming through is not going to hit directly onto the microphone. Then of course you've got your microphone positioning within the room. If your room is well treated, you probably don't have to worry about it too much, but if it's not well treated, you might want to pick the center of the room rather than right next to a wall, where you're going to get some really early and noisy reverberations. One thing for ease, and this is something I'll talk about more in the future, is having a mic arm like I have here is the Rode PSA-1. This one's incredibly helpful because I can just be sitting here and record myself, and I can just turn and sing whenever I want to, and when I'm done with it, I can push it out of the way and carry on working on things. That way I don't have any excuses not to get started with recording because it's right there and it's really quick. I then have a really simple audio interface because most of the time I'm just recording myself. I've used this Audient ID4 for years now. I love it. It's so simple but very high quality and very intuitive to use. You've got an input gain that you can control. You've then got a balance, a blend between your headphone and your microphone sound. Then you've got the general volume, which you can turn up, and of course you can mute the speakers. On the recording end, you just want to try and minimize the room noise as much as you can. So that could mean pointing the microphone away from the computer, turning off your speakers, even things like guitars and pianos. If they're close in the room, it's probably a good idea to put some sort of mute on them. Sometimes they can resonate at certain frequencies, which could then bleed into your recording as well. For setting your recording levels with the interface, it doesn't have to be too complicated. You of course don't want the signal to be clipping too hard, but you also don't want it to be too quiet, because when you then turn all of that up, the noise floor, the white noise that's in your room, is also going to come up with it, so you want a nice balance. Generally, I hear people mentioning between -18 to -6 dB. You can of course just look at the levels in your DAW to see what you're recording at, and you want it to be in that green orangey area. You don't want it to peak up into the red, and you just don't want it to be too low as well. So in the Edison, you can click this section here on the levels, and this meter will show up and give you an idea of where your levels are actually at when you're recording. So if I want to set this to about -6 dB, so call it there, that gives me an idea of what I want to sing in between. La, la, la. Any more than that and I would be going maybe slightly louder than I would like, but it's all safe within that range. It can be very easy to fixate on this too much and overcomplicate this process. You will find with trial and error what works best with your microphone and with the compression that you will then use. I tend to record with my headphones on both ears usually, so that I can hear the signal. That's just what I like. Some people like to record with one ear off so they get a balance, they can hear their voice more clearly. I aim to get the nicest balance that I can, so I'm not getting too much headphone bleed is being played so loudly that it comes out and comes into the recording as well. Generally I tend to avoid that, especially with the metronome. Control the metronome volume so that you can hear it enough to keep on tempo, but not so much that it bleeds into the recording. Of course, these are closed back headphones. Having open back headphones obviously wouldn't be the best thing. This being said, if I'm recording some big high energy song and I want to really get into it, I sometimes do just turn the instrumental right up. There's probably going to be a little bit of headphone bleed, but if it's a really loud part of the song, you're just not going to notice. That pretty much covers the physical setup, so now we can dive into the digital setup. The DAW I use is FL Studio, and everybody knows that FL Studio is the best DAW in the universe, and that's not even a question anymore. Although actually, I know I joke, but a lot of the times FL Studio has been a little bit more frustrating to record vocals. It hasn't had the same option or setup as some of the other DAWs have. I tend to use what's called the Edison, and I find it's the best way for me to record lots of vocal takes and for my project not to get messy, and I can just record directly into the same project that I produced the idea with. Everything I'm aiming for when it comes to vocals is to try and make the process as effortless as possible. If an idea comes to me, I just record it. Using the Edison helps me do that because I don't have to create a separate vocal recording project. I can just record it all within the same project without the playlist getting really messy and busy. So let's dive into Drift. I'm going to show you how I recorded the vocals for it. It's pretty busy and it looks super complicated, and a lot of the instrumental and the vocal processing is quite complicated, but the recording process is very, very simple. You can record onto the playlist in FL Studio. It's one of the updated features that they've recently improved, but I still actually prefer to record into the Edison because you can see how many different vocal layers there are. These are all of Jess's vocals here in this pinky purple color. These are all of my vocals. If I recorded all of the vocal takes onto the playlist and then had to choose between them and comp them all together, whilst also being in the main project with all the instrumentals and so on, it would get so chaotic, it would be dangerous, I think. So to keep everything more organized and to stay on top of it all, I have a little record channel, as you can see here in the mixer, set up with an Edison ready to go every time I want to, and that's part of my project template. I don't tend to record with effects on my vocal. I just prefer to listen to pretty much the raw vocal, especially with more intimate songs like this. If you want to avoid using too much CPU by playing the entire instrumental all at once, mute that and export an instrumental, which I have here. And then you can record over the top of the instrumental. It's going to save a lot of CPU. I also have a separate metronome channel here. Usually the metronome goes to the master, but I find it really important to go on to your options, audio, and the preview mixer track. I've set that to 1. Usually I think it's set to 0. By setting it to 1, that tells it to go to channel 1 here. So if I turn the metronome on, the metronome is playing there. But it means I can turn the metronome right down. That way, it's not going to bleed into the recording, especially with the intimate vocals. First thing I want to make sure to do is to mute the speakers, but better still, I will just turn them off. That way no noise can be coming through from the speakers whatsoever. Loading in Edison is really easy. You just select it from all of the options here. I've put it in a little folder of record and edit. The Edison is there. You can just be on the mixer and press Ctrl E, and it will immediately load up a new Edison and you can get recording. Of course, to make sure I've connected the audio interface, I select from the drop down menu here and work out which one your microphone is coming from. I'm using the ID4 and it's coming from analog 1. So when I click that there, you can see down here, la 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 la, I'm getting a signal. I have to make sure that I mute this, otherwise I'll have a double of my voice. So I turn that off, but I can still hear my voice because I've adjusted the audio interface so I can hear the vocals. The settings within the Edison are relatively simple as well. You just load it up and press record, and immediately the voice starts recording. But one of the key things I like to do is change it from now to on play. And that just means that whenever I press play, it starts recording, but whenever it's not playing, it doesn't continue recording. Let's say I want to record the vocals for the chorus. I will create an in point and an out point there, and then click record on the Edison, make sure that it's on play, and then press play. Then it starts recording, and I can just sing in a couple of different takes of the chorus, and then we'll get to comping it.
So I fall through the dark, feel the colors break apart and drift away, float to distant memory with all my love untethered.
Okay, so got a couple of different takes there. Press stop on the recording and leave that there. Those are all of my takes, and you can see all the song jump points, the loop points that have been made there. But still, the playlist is nice and clean. Then I can click this normalize button here just to increase the size of it, and then I can have a look at the waveform and see if there's anything abnormal or anything that I might want to adjust or change. There are so many effects within the Edison that you can use to adjust the vocals, but I won't dive into all of them now, but it's an incredibly versatile plugin. Open up the mixer and turn it back on again. Be sure to turn off my microphone so I'm not hearing a double again, and then I can have a listen through to the different takes.
So I fall through the dark, feel the colors break apart.
Then I can see which ones that I like, and if there's one that I think is good, I will just select it and drag it in. There is a shortcut that you can use. I think it's just Shift C, but it drops it in right up at the top, and I wish FL Studio would maybe do something to make it drop in wherever you ask for it to drop in. I don't mind dragging it in anyway, because I'm probably going to have to move it and adjust the timing of it anyway. Because I've already assigned this channel using the track mode, and then assigned it to my main vocal bus here, Kobe main, any vocal that I drop here, either on this channel or in the test channels here, will immediately be sent to my vocal chain. This lineup here are the final takes that I got from the actual single, but I'll mute those for now, and we can test out those takes that I did just there.
Away, float to distant memory with all my love untethered.
So I usually review the vocals on their own in isolation within the Edison here first. I do as many takes of any of the sections that I want to, and I just drag in the stuff that I like, and that's how I end up with this.
Away, float to distant memory with all my love untethered.
And then I will do the same thing for all the vocal layers and the harmonies and so on.
Fall through the dark, feel the colors break apart.
So just to give you an example, I'll play all of the different vocal layers that we ended up with at the end.
Fall through the dark, feel the colors break apart and drift away, float to distant memory with all my love untethered. tethered.
Those vocals stay in the Edison until you drag them into the project. Then they become a vocal take once you drag them in. But if I didn't do that, there would be so many vocal takes all over the place, and it would be almost impossible to keep track of. So yeah, that's the process. I'd love to hear how you do things, whether you have any suggestions, whether you've discovered another way of doing it that I might like. Leave the comments down below. I'm really interested to see how you go about it. Like I say, the song Drift is linked below. If you want to go and add it to your playlist and sing along, feel free. So that is the digital setup, and like I said, I'm aiming with the physical and with the digital setup to make the whole process as simple and accessible as possible. And of course, having the physical setup with the mic boom arm and my audio interface right there, and even the fact that I've got my computer placed on my right and my microphone is on my left, because my mouse I use with my right hand to control the screen. I have the two screens here. It's all been tailored towards me being able to just work with minimal limitations. I always start with a template so I can throw them straight away into the project and just test how the ideas are going to sound with my vocal chain already on it. And of course, if you want that template, it's down below. I've released it for free so that you guys can benefit from the same setup. Now we come on to the third and most important aspect of vocal recording, and that is the performance. Performance is king. If you had an awful vocal performance and it just felt uptight and unrelaxed, unprepared, unrehearsed, it just doesn't matter how much expensive equipment you've got or how good your producing skills are, you can only really fix so much. I guess one of the key things that you can adjust is pitch. So obviously if there's a couple of flat notes here and there, that's very adjustable and can be done pretty transparently. But when it comes to actual energy, emotion, diction, it's pretty impossible to edit them in post. You've really got to nail them on the actual performance. So whether you're recording yourself or someone else, it's really good to learn all the different things that make you feel the most relaxed. You want to have tested all of your setup and the equipment so that when you're actually singing, you're not second guessing yourself going, I don't know if I've actually set this up properly. That uncertainty is probably going to come through in your vocal. You just want to feel the most connected to the emotion that you're trying to sing about. Making the setup as accessible as possible makes it much more easy to get over the resistance to start recording vocals. If I had to take out my microphones and wire them all up and prepare the session and add all the different vocal chains and all that kind of stuff, it would take forever every time I wanted to record vocals. Whereas right now, if an idea comes to me, I literally just open the mixer, press record on the Edison, and go from there. That's me. I've also been working with a singing coach recently. I've been practicing developing that. In the past, I'd often find myself singing something over and over and over again, repeating something without changing anything and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. Well, that's what I was doing. I wasn't changing my vocal technique at all. I hadn't explored how to sing different things. I was just like, I want to hit that note and I can't, so I'm just gonna push harder, and like it doesn't work. So I think it's a good idea to do the practice beforehand, explore these kinds of things so that when it comes to the vocal recording session, you're in your flow state. There we go. That's how I record pro vocals. Of course, if you guys have any other tips and suggestions, leave them down below. If you have any questions, leave them there too, or send me a message on Instagram. If you want to see the next video in the vocal series, make sure you click subscribe. It is coming very soon, or it's already here. And of course, believe in yourself and you will be unstoppable. Bye.